Welcome back, everybody. Today, I'm here to respond to what I expect to be the huge controversy from my previous episode involving the steel mixer. Last episode, I did a versus battle with this steel mixer against the traditional method that I use to mix concrete, which is a mixing tub and a tool like a hoe. And I can't lie, I was surprised by the results I got. In the end of that video, I shared my thoughts, so check that out. But I've got another sidewalk to pour, and I want to give this another shot. This is gonna be the definitive steel mixer review. Is it worth it? We're gonna find out. This concrete project is also going to be the first sidewalk with a curved edge I've ever made. I started by cutting my 2x4s for my perimeter, then I cut some 3/8 inch plywood for the curved section. I'm hoping this plywood has enough flex to bend around the base of the yucca. Ooh, and that bends a lot. Before I moved any further, I grabbed that piece of wood and I tested the flex, and I liked it. Even dry, it still bent a lot. I used some leftover thermally treated ash from the lounge chair build to create some garden stakes, and then I also made sure to pre-drill all the holes in my 2x4 and the wood for the stakes. This is going to prevent wood from splitting when I screw it together. Before I placed my form, I needed to prepare my site for the sidewalk. There's quite a bit of dirt I needed to remove around the base of that yucca tree. I want to prevent damaging the roots as much as possible, and that's why I'm only doing a 3-inch thick pour on the tree side, whereas next to the shed, the sidewalk's going to be 3.5 inches thick. As I laid out these pieces, I made sure that everything was square and equal distant from the edge of the existing shed slab. Then, I staked everything down and screwed it in place, making sure that these 2x4s are sitting really level, basically a tiny slope towards the outside edge so that water will drain away from the shop. Out here in the Joshua Tree Desert, I've got some pretty hard ground, and even these ash stakes struggled getting into the dirt. Once all of my 2x4s were screwed in, I then grabbed my 3/8 inch piece of plywood and I soaked it in water on each side. This is going to help the board flex without breaking, and I was really happy to see that I was able to get it in place. That is perfect. Let's go. I couldn't use screws to connect this piece because of the dirt mound behind the board, so I just ended up using some finish nails. Then I cut a block of wood to fill in this negative space. I probably should have just cut the end of the 2x4 at an angle, but either way, we're all good. I siliconed up those corners and then worked on adding my rebar. I used a diamond disc on my angle grinder, but a cutting wheel would have been a little bit quicker. If you do a little researching online, you'll find that rebar isn't necessary on a sidewalk, but since I'm not a concrete pro, I figure this will get me a better, longer lasting result, and that's what I want. I'm basically stacking as many advantages as I can. Let's pour. I picked up this wheelbarrow attachment, and I think this is gonna solve almost every issue I had with the tool. The steel mixer wheelbarrow attachment is really cool. You get these wheels that go on the end and then handles so that you can move, lift, and pour this whole setup rather than needing to use a transfer shovel to remove the concrete or just lifting up the whole hopper with concrete and water in it. As you can see, I had to pre-drill all of my holes for these pieces, and I think that's because I've got an older model steel mixer. Now that they've released this wheelbarrow attachment, I assume that new ones have holes pre-drilled. That way this is a really fast process, and it's not any kind of headache like what I was messing with here. This whole assembly took me about an hour, but if I didn't have to drill holes, it would probably only take 10 or 15 minutes. The reason that I think this is going to be such a game changer is because I was using 90-pound bags whenever I tested this, and lifting that hopper to carry it where you want to pour is just a lot of work. But now I'll be able to move this around before and after the concrete's mixed to get it poured exactly where I want. And to make sure that the tub stays on the stand, there's this little bracket that goes over the pivot points. And now everything is locked in, ready to go. This is pretty awesome. I can really see how this is gonna be handy. I think it's gonna be way less stress on the back. And now we'll be able to pinpoint and pour this bucket where we want. The reality of it is, I think the steel mixer is such a cool tool. The guy who invented this, I think, had such a neat idea. Plus, it's made in the USA, and it's a veteran-owned company, which I really respect. The steps to this are very important. First, you want to add your water. And I'm pretty sure that we've got the right amount. I've got a Sharpie marked where the level is supposed to be. Getting water around all the sides of your hopper is also helpful, so it's lubricated. And now we can add our concrete. This is a 90-pound bag and the website says it can mix up to 100 pounds. This is the fun part of the Steele mixer. All you do is pivot the hopper from side to side. Whoa, and you really let gravity do the work. And now we're getting pretty mixed up, and a few of these shakes tend to help out a little bit. And I've got this clod in my concrete that isn't quite breaking up. After mixing for about 1.5 minutes, I still had a couple of these little clods. We're gonna get this all figured out. I was definitely a little concerned to see those clumps, so I just reset my timer to 1 minute to see how this would shake out. I think this is gonna be a quality mix, but there's only one way to find out. We will lock this in place and pour it. I'm a little nervous. Here we go. Awesome. Yeah, good pour. I'm loving the consistency of this. We're in the desert, so it's a little bit soupy. That way I've got decent work time, but I don't feel any clods, any clumps. That's big. I promise I'm not getting ahead of myself, but I am liking the results so far. What I am looking for though is a perfect or borderline perfect mix without having to mess with any clumps in the hopper. Just like before, we're going all the way to one side and letting as much shift as I can, and then we're going all the way this way. That's really moving, I like that. This time I wanted to mix for another minute without breaking up clumps by hand to see what kind of results we were able to get, and this is that. All right, it emptied out well, but let's check our mix. Now I'm already seeing something I don't like, but how hard of a clod. Oh, golly, that's so easy to break apart. I did not want this to happen. Let's get this moved around and incorporated real quick. I want to do that. And just so we're all on the same page, this is a pretty fresh pallet of concrete. There's no water damage on any of these bags that I would imagine making clumps happen. I wouldn't have expected this. The one thing though, you gotta keep in mind, it takes like no effort to break those clumps up. It's not like it's making the process way harder. It's just a tiny bit different reality than expectation. But we're moving and grooving. This is fun. I'm having a good time. So first, we'll go to this side before slowly tipping it the other way. Goodness. Be careful. I'm messy with everything though. I'm sure people could be way cleaner than I am. I make a mess doing everything I do. But now hopefully you can get a good view of inside the hopper as it's going to the other side. And you can see how it's all getting mixed up. It's all getting saturated as we tip it. And now we can start moving a little bit quicker. It's tough filming the inside of this thing, but here you can get a little bit of a view. This is also just a little thing, but that part just needed a baby bit of help. No problem. And we were back with another perfect pour. The only downside is I had to use the shovel in the mixer to break up a couple pieces. That's what I'm talking about. It's really nice. On this next mix, I didn't mess with the shovel in the mixer, and you can see, without breaking up those clumps, they just stay in there, even when I mix for way longer than a minute. And to be clear, these clumps basically burst in my hand without even squeezing them, like gravity breaks them apart, so I'm wondering why I can't get them to shake up in the mixer. And I think after this pour, we should get it screeded out. Quality check. Very happy with that. I just got this really straight, long 2x4 that I'm gonna use to reference these edges to flatten out the concrete in the middle, and I'm probably gonna have to go pretty diagonal around this curve. Let's wing it. If I do another curved concrete pour like this, I'll make sure to get a couple different length screeding boards. I've done a lot of talking about the mixer, but I am genuinely curious. At this point, what do you think? Leave me a comment. Let's like start a thread or something down below. I'm just your standard DIY guy. I'm no like concrete pro or expert. So I'm really curious what you guys think. Is this a tool that would be too much of a headache because there's a little bit of finicky with clumps? Or is the cool factor of being human powered, no electricity, no gas motor, really worth it? I'm pretty much always positive, but I'm trying real hard to keep this candid. But the last thing I wanna do is kind of like crap on a product. That shouldn't be. That's definitely not my intent. I wanna do another batch of bags with the Steele mixer in the stands before I start concluding whether I really think it's worth it. Because I'm starting to get the hang of it the more I use it. I was getting the hang of it, but still getting clumps.
And as I'm thinking about it, having a clump in there doesn't make it harder to mix, but it does kind of affect the ability to mix a bag under 60 seconds.
Working around this yucca tree, I had really limited access with my mixer, so I ended up using a transfer shovel to pinpoint some of this concrete where I needed. Last episode, I had no fun being stuck either using a shovel or lifting that big hopper, but you'll definitely find situations where you'll need to shovel the concrete out of the steel mixer, and it's the perfect shape for a square transfer shovel. That is a nice design. And while I was flattening, I looked at the clock and realized I had been working for about an hour and a half or two.
Last episode, I waited a little bit longer than I should have, edging and troweling out the first concrete I poured. So that's something I want to make sure I do right this time.
We just want to get our round over established and flattened out a little bit before we keep pouring.
But first, I want to give a big thanks to the sponsor of today's episode, Squarespace. Your one-stop shop to build your own website or online store, and that's never been easier. With Squarespace's cutting-edge design tools like Blueprint AI, Squarespace's AI-enhanced website builder. Plus, you can get discovered fast with Squarespace's integrated SEO tools. They do all the complicated back-end work to make sure that you show up more often on search results, leading to more customers. And with Squarespace Invoices, you can get paid faster and impress clients with on-brand invoices. Plus, you can streamline your workflow from proposals to contracts to invoices to seamless online payments all in one place. And with Squarespace email campaigns, you've got all the tools you need to engage your clients, promote your services, and build your business built in. So to learn more, make sure and follow my link down in the description. That's squarespace.com/modernbuilds. And then when it's time to make your new site live, don't forget to use my code ModernBuilds for 10% off your first site, store, or domain through Squarespace. As always, big thanks to Squarespace for supporting DIY content and you all for watching. Now let's finish up this pour.
We are back from our sponsor break and we're shoveling out some concrete to get around this curve. And soon we'll be back to utilizing that mobile base beyond just wheeling back and forth from my mixing station.
That's just happening too often, and they're too brittle. It's not like these are hard clumps at all. Even gravity breaks them apart. Oh, shoot.
It's unfortunate, but we've got clumps again.
This is becoming messy.
We are finally getting close to where we're past the curve in the sidewalk and we'll be back to a square form.
Before I talk about the mixer, I'm gonna talk about the curved concrete. The form was a little bit tougher than I expected to make, but the results we're getting are pretty cool. I'm not fast at pouring this pad, so my finish isn't supreme, but this is gonna be way smoother than my previous pad. On this next mix, I'm gonna set up the tripod directly overhead so you can see the mix happening in real time.
Exposing this shot was a little bit tough because it's dark inside of the tub and really sunny outside. But you can see how the material moves from left to right and new powder is constantly getting saturated until eventually the whole thing is able to slosh around and really start blending. And I think this is a good example of what it looks like when you've got some clods in there. It just doesn't matter how much you go back and forth, I just wasn't able to break them up. And I've got to say, there was something about having to stick my hand in wet concrete all day that made me a little less excited about the steel mixer. But FYI, I was still enjoying myself. It's not like breaking up these clumps made it such a hard task, just messy.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about this bag, but this mix is just about perfect. It mixed 100% in like 30 seconds too. Awesome.
And with access to the edge of our form, we could start pouring this bad boy again. Over the course of the next few bags, I was super shocked to find the inconsistency between a perfect mix and a bag that I occasionally got some clumps in because I used the same amount of water.
Already, that's mixed a lot.
It seemed like an absolutely perfect bag with no possibility of clumping did a really good job of mixing up inside of the steel mixer, but as soon as it was just 5% away from perfect, 10% away from perfect, I struggled a lot. But I'm telling you, if every bag came out of the steel mixer mixed like this, you would hear zero complaints out of me.
I don't know if there's a thing where it's just, if a bag is kind of 10% off, it's kind of hard for this to break up the clumps. But if you got a perfect bag, kind of shockingly easy to mix. This one feels really soft around all the edges. Let's check this mix out. Start the timer.
I'm really glad that I said all of this before the mix. This is a borderline perfect bag. It was in the middle of the pallet, exposed to no sunlight even.
And there's really only one clump in here that I can see. Otherwise, perfect mix.
If you were to ask me, there should have been 0 clumps from that bag. In reality, there shouldn't have been any clumps from any of them. They were new, good bags, but I also understand sometimes a concrete bag can be a little bit crusty here and there. But I mixed like 56 bags of concrete between the tub and the steel mixer, and I only got clumping problems from the steel mixer. Anytime I mixed using the traditional method of a hoe and a plastic mixing tub, I got 0 clumps. I could just break them up with the tool right away.
One thing's for sure, the wheels are easier than the tub, but the tub's easier than the base with no wheels.
I don't know if that makes sense, but shout out to the wheels.
And now I got my technique down. Let's time this.
Essentially, you save a minute per 90-pound bag by mixing it with the steel mixer, assuming that you're not getting any clumps. And if you're gonna be doing a lot of bags of concrete in a day, that time can really add up. And compared to scooting this pail around on the ground, the wheelbarrow attachment for the steel mixer is awesome.
This whole time I've been saying a 60-pound bag would probably be a breeze in this mixer. And so for the rest of these pours, we're giving it a try. Lifting was sure easier. Let's find out if mixing is as well.
One nice thing about it is that it was a lot more difficult to spill pivoting from side to side.
I did use a tiny bit too much water, but that still shouldn't be sticking on the bottom like that. And this is a brand new bag from the store. This hasn't been sitting outside at my place or seeing any weather at all.
I certainly wasn't judging too much on this mix because of the amount of water. Instead, I made a line on my bucket where I poured to and just made sure to do less on the next one.
Those 60-pound bags feel so light now that I'm used to the 90s. And this time, I'm really hoping for no clumps. This is really gonna determine a lot for this tool. So far, so good. This looks like about the perfect amount of water. I really found that if I've added too much water, even by a little bit, the clumps are a little harder to break up. They just kind of go with the flow. Well, that was fast. It looks awesome, and it's ready to pour.
In this shot, the convenience factor of the wheelbarrow attachment is obvious. You can pour right into your form, and that's a huge time save.
This one felt like a really good mix also.
I was getting hype at this point in the project because I was just a couple bags away from being done with this pour.
And I think I'll mix the last few bags right here.
Throughout the project, I was trying to limit the amount of concrete spills I made. That's why I made the mixing zone that I did.
Oh, and this is way easier to pick up and carry compared to that 90-pound bag.
This method is way quicker than using a transfer shovel.
That was easy.
For me, it was pretty tough moving around 100-something pounds of concrete and water inside the steel mixer hopper to kind of get a pinpointed pour. But with these 60-pound bags, it is very easy and pretty convenient. It's just a bummer that you have to mix 3 bags for every 2 90-pound ones if you're using 60-pound bags. I've got a few steps to finish out this sidewalk before I give my final thoughts on the steel mixer, so make sure and stay tuned.
We did it!
Before my concrete got a chance to set too much, I grabbed my edging tool to establish our corner profile. Then I used my finishing trowel to get a smooth result. I love getting the concrete practice. I want to be able to get a really smooth trowel finish eventually.
It's curved, and it wasn't that tough. I mean, that's super pro for a DIY project. DIY super pro. I slept on it, and I know what my thoughts are on the steel mixer. I think it's pretty dope, but it's just not a perfect use case for me. It's not so expensive that you could directly compare it to something that's like no effort mixing. Really, it's between the steel mixer, a small electric mixer, or the classic tub and a hoe that I used. And for me, when I weigh the price and the effort and time of things, I'm just gonna stick to a classic mixing pail. But if I was doing a project where I knew I would be shoveling a lot of concrete instead of wanting to pour, I'm thinking of stuff like fence posts, maybe somewhere in a really confined space, the steel mixer would be great. Just make sure that you've got really quality bags of concrete, because this just seemed to be a little bit finicky in that regard. Adding the mobile base onto this steel mixer, in my opinion, is a huge win, especially with the price in mind. It kind of doubles the awesome factor. I'll leave a link to this down in the description if you're interested in picking one up, and I really want people that have experience with this to leave their comments down below. That way this can be a really good buying guide or resource for people interested in investing the money into this, because it's not super cheap. Also, I'd like to give a big thanks to the creator and owner of the steel mixer for reaching out to me. I hope you think that this review is fair, and I hope the viewers enjoyed this kind of series of genius or gimmick, which this is pretty genius. I forgot to mention that this really shines with a 60-pound bag. You can lift it and dump it super easy, but I don't want to sacrifice the time because it takes 3 60-pound bags to do 2 90-pound bags, and that takes away any time savings with this bad boy.
I'll still be keeping this concrete in the form for another day or two while it cures, but I do want to show you the result we got. I learned a lot going from the first pad to the second, and we got better results the second time around. So cool.
Bye, everybody.